everyone, how are you? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another wrap up, this time for the month of September. It was a pretty good reading month, I think. I read 6 books, and what's interesting is that most of them were fantasy. So I'm gonna start with the only adult fantasy that I read, and that is Black Sun. So I liked a lot of things about this book. First of all, I loved the world building, the way the world worked. For example, how the cities actually differed from each other, how the cultures actually differed from each other, different characters from different cultures didn't just have different names, they actually had different views of the world, and sometimes there were culture shocks. And I just love that because sometimes, well, a lot of times in fantasy books, you have a whole continent with different like cultures in it, but the cultures feel the same. They might have a bit different like names or clothes and customs, but then the characters just all behave the same. Like the culture isn't really or like their background isn't really visible in their actions and decision making, which is kind of bullshit. So I love that this book actually took real cultural differences and put them into action because, yeah, it's cool to see in fantasy books the different customs and different like types of magic and stuff like that. But then at the end of the day, if the characters from totally different backgrounds act the same and make the same decisions, then it's just not really realistic and it's kind of boring. And I think this book did this really well. When it comes to magic, I especially like the idea for the Teak song. I thought that was really cool, and I hope it's gonna be explored more in the next book. Because here, I just feel like there wasn't enough of it, but it was really cool. I also found a way that religions sort of coexisted quite interesting, but I'm not gonna get too much into that because I think that could get spoilery real quick because there's just yeah, I'm not gonna get into that, but that was also really interesting. So another thing that I enjoyed is the variety of the characters. There were so many characters that were, like I said before, actually different from each other, sort of based on their background, but also personalities. And they were all sort of morally gray. They were not black and white. There weren't any heroes and villains. Everybody was just human. And I really like that. I mean, in YA fantasy, I don't mind if the characters are a bit more black and white, but in adult fantasy, I just don't want them to be like that. I need a bit more depth, and the characters in here they were a lot of things. I'm not sure if that made any sense, but I just really like them. So what I also thought was really interesting is how this book depicts gender. In some of the cultures, there is a third gender, and I really like that the view on gender wasn't consistent across the cultures on the continent in this book. Like in some of the cultures, like I said, there was a third gender, perfectly ordinary. But in other cultures, when they met someone of this third gender, they were a bit more confused. They were like, oh, okay, okay. And I just love how inconsistent it was because in real world it's also inconsistent. I think it really challenges the way we see gender from a very Christianized, westernized point of view. So I think it's great that this book sort of took that and showed us how it could be done differently. And the last thing I thought was really interesting is how the story is told, because it's not linear, it's sort of well, first of all, there's multiple points of view like in between the characters, but also you have different timelines kind of, and you kind of jump in between them. And honestly, it was a bit confusing at first. Like I I get confused really easily when I read a story that's told this way, but it was also really cool. Like, there were some timelines and points of view that I didn't really care about as much as about the others. Like, sometimes I get a little bit bored because of that, but I also thought it was really cool. So, yeah. So, from everything that I said so far, I think this book just seems really great. Like, it has to seem like a great book, and it is. I think objectively, I really think it's a great book that does a lot of things really well. However, it didn't really click with me. Like, it just, to be fair, I read it when I was in a really weird place mentally. I was in a kind of a slump, just like not even a reading slump, just like life slump. So maybe that had something to do with it. But I don't know. Like, I really would recommend this book because I think it's a great fantasy. But personally, I didn't really enjoy reading it that much. I don't know how to explain it because this is very subjective, and like I said, it probably had something to do with my mood and just overall state when I was reading it. But yeah, however, I'm really excited for the next book, and I hope that I will vibe with it a little bit more. But yeah, so I give it 3.75 stars. Now I'm gonna move on to YA fantasy, specifically to Leah Bardugo's books. One, The Shadow and Bone, which is the first book in the Grisha trilogy, and the second one being The Six of Crows, which is the first book in the Six of Crows duology. I'm not sure what I'm doing with my hands. I'm also not sure if it's a duology because I know it was supposed to be a duology, but now there might be a third book. But anyway, um, let's start with Shadow and Bone. So, you might have guessed that I didn't enjoy this book as much from when I said that I read this book and Six of Crows, because if I wanted to read it all properly, I would have read the full Grisha trilogy first and then the Six of Crows books. And I didn't do that. I only read the first Grisha and then Six of Crows. So yeah, that indicates I did not really fall for the series, which is true, I didn't. I was really disappointed in this book, and I just decided that the rest of the trilogy is not worth it for me, and I jumped to Six of Crows. But I'm gonna talk about that later. Now let's focus on Shadow and Bone. So I was just unimpressed on all fronts. Like, the characters were all kind of annoying, and I just didn't care about them. Like, that's the problem. I just didn't care about them. Yeah, so I didn't like the characters, and when I don't love the characters, that's usually a big turn off for me when it comes to a book. But if there's a really good plot and like great magic system or something, then it's fine. Like, I don't have to love the characters. However, I didn't love the plot either. I did like the magic. I think the magic is kind of cool. But just liking the magic system is not enough for me, at least, to hold my interest while reading a book. So I just, mm, you know, I mean, I don't want to say it's a bad book. It just wasn't for me. Like, there are other YA fantasies that I liked much more. So yeah, that's why I just decided I'm not gonna finish the series, and I jumped to Six of Crows. Right. You might be wondering, why did I even read The Six of Crows when I didn't like Shadow and Bone so much I didn't even finish the trilogy? And I had multiple reasons. The first being that I really liked the premise of the book, and I also heard that it's like a YA version of The Lies of Lucky Lamora, and I had a weird relationship with that book, and I just wanted to see how I'm gonna like this book, I guess. But so that was one reason, the premise. But also, I heard a lot of people say that Bardugo improves a lot with each book that she writes, and so I felt like, hey, this gotta be better than Shadow and Bone, right? I was right. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it so much more than I thought I would. Which, okay, to be fair, my expectations were really low after Shadow and Bone, so I didn't really, you know, I lowered them, definitely. But this was good. I really, really liked it. I don't really, to be honest, I don't think I have that much to say about it, even though I did enjoy it. I just feel like there's not that much to say. Like, the whole Grishaverse is all over Bookstagram and Booktube, so if you want a deep dive into this, maybe watch a different video than mine. But what I'm gonna say is that I loved the characters, I loved the differences between them, like they were not all the same. I also again liked that they had more depth to them. They weren't just one-dimensional. I don't want to say enjoyed because it sounds weird, but I did kind of enjoy the portrayal of Kaz's PTSD. I thought that was done really well. And I also really shipped everyone. Not like everyone with everyone, I shipped the couples that formed, kind of. I don't want to give away anything, but like, yeah. And normally I don't like if there's a group of people and then everyone kind of becomes a couple with everyone. But here I wouldn't mind. Here I was, yeah, like, yeah. So now I'm actually really excited for the TV show because after finishing Shadow and Bone, I was like, okay. But now after finishing The Six of Crows, I'm really excited to watch the show. However, before I watch it, I need to read the second book in the Six of Crows trilogy and then also maybe the two other books that are set in Grishaverse, but I'm not sure. We'll see about that. But the point is, now I am actually excited to watch that show, which I wasn't after Shadow and Bone, to be completely honest. So now we're moving on to middle grade fantasy, specifically the Percy Jackson series. I read the first two books and oh my god. I mean, I don't think I'm gonna say much about them because just like with the Grishaverse books, they are so well known and so hyped that I just don't feel like I have that much more to say. So I'm just gonna tell you how I felt about them really quickly and then we'll move on to the final book. So yeah, I really liked them. I mean, of course, there were things that I was kind of like about. For example, in the first book, there was this questionable portrayal of a Middle Eastern woman that I was kind of like, okay, about. Also, sometimes the characters made really stupid decisions and definitely suffered from hero complex, but like, they're heroes, so go figure. But overall, it was like a warm hug. I haven't read middle grade in a while, and this was just like, it was just so nice. I'm sorry, I don't know if my movements are really adding anything to what I'm saying, but it's just, yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, I like these books a lot and I'm so excited to finish the series. I think I will finish it this year, hopefully. We'll see about that, but I have the next three books right here. So yeah, I'm excited to delve into them. And yeah, like it's just so sweet. And also they're really bingeable. I think I binged both of them. Like I think I read both of them in 1 or 2 days. So yeah. And that's also really nice to be able to pick up a book and just lie into bed or curl up in a really cozy armchair or whatever and just take the book and read it in one go. I think that's just so nice. Yeah, I feel like my thoughts were a bit chaotic, but generally I just like the books. I thought they were fun. And also it's just really nice to finally know what people are talking about when they talk about Percy Jackson. I mean, I really have to be careful for spoilers because since the series came out a long time ago, people are not really careful with spoilers, which is annoying. But I kind of get it, but it's annoying. So yeah, I have to be careful. But now when someone's like, yeah, Annabeth this or Percy that, I know who those people actually are, so that's nice. So the last book I'm gonna talk about is very, very different from the rest because first of all, it's not a fantasy. Second of all, it's actually a graphic novel and it's also a true story, or well, based on a true story, and that is The Complete Mouse. Okay, so first of all, I just want to give a quick personal background to books that are about the Holocaust or the World War II. I'm from Central Europe, and so the Holocaust literally happened here or around here. And so growing up, I learned a lot about it. I kept learning and learning and learning. And I just, at some point, I felt like I just don't want to consume any more media about it. Not because I don't want to educate myself, but because I just feel like on this particular topic, it was a bit too much at some point because I just learned about it everywhere from my relatives at school, from media. I read books about it. I just consumed a lot of media about it. And at some point, I just felt like maybe this is enough. Maybe it's time to go to a different part of history and explore that a bit more instead of just like going back to this one topic over and over again. Because while I think it's very, very important to know your history, I feel like at some point when you know it really well, it becomes more about torturing yourself with it, sort of. And I just didn't like that's why I don't really like novels about the Holocaust, like the tattooists from Auschwitz and stuff like that, because and no shade to anyone reading it, like read what you want. But personally to me, reading those is just sort of like, yeah, just a weird form of self-torture that I did not want to participate in anymore, because first of all, those books don't actually add in any factual information. They just, I feel like they almost glorify the pain and the suffering sometimes. Not all of them, but some of them. And I'm just not here for it. Like I'm just not. So at some point, I think last year, I decided I'm not gonna read any more stories from the World War II, except from out of Europe stories. So for example, I'm planning to read this one book. I can't remember the name. I'm gonna put it up on the screen. And so I want to read that, but no more European-centered World War II stories. I just read enough of those. However, with Mouse, I think it's a little bit different because first of all, it's actually a real story, but also it's not just about what happened during the war. It's also a lot of it is about what happened after, and a lot of it is about the author's because he was born after the war. This story is about his father mostly, but it's also about the author's relationship with his father, which, by the way, I think was done so well. Like it felt so real. It literally it that hurt me, maybe the most about the book, or like not hurt me the most, but maybe impacted me the most about the book was the portrayal of his relationship with his father and his sort of journey of learning their experiences during the war, which were horrible. And it can't be easy listening to your parents telling you about their time into concentration camps. Like, that's just, And also him knowing that because he was born after it, he didn't have to suffer as much as a lot of his people suffered, and maybe some of the guilt that comes with that. I don't know if that makes any sense, but there is this has a name, but there is kind of guilt of surviving something, like survivor's guilt. So this is similar, the guilt of not going through something that your family went through and not sharing the I hope you know what I mean. I'm not sure how to explain that, but it's explained, or well, rather shown quite well in the book, I think. And so for me, this was more about what happened after than during the war. And yeah, the book, I can't rate it because this is someone's story, and not just someone's story, but someone's story during such a difficult time. So I feel like I just can't give it a star rating. That just feels wrong. But I have to say I did like it. I can't say I enjoyed it because obviously you can't really enjoy reading a book like this. Like, it was painful. It hurt a lot, but it was good. And I think I don't like to say everybody should read this because it's up to you what you read, but I do think that people should read this book, and I totally understand why it became such a classic because it's good. It's really good. Also, because there's two volumes, there's Mouse Volume 1 and Volume 2, but I read them together when they were published together much later. And so I read the Volume 2 right after I read Volume 1. And I really liked how in Volume 2 you can also see the author's doubts about publishing the book and the sort of reaction of his family and his surroundings on the publishing of the first book. And that was also really cool to see. I think was also really cool to see was how he thought about portraying his father, because he worried about not like he worried that if he portrays him the way he would like to, it would be too stereotypical, and he didn't want to obviously add into the stereotypization of Jews. However, he still wanted to portray him as like closely to reality as possible, and sort of like clash in that was also pretty cool to see. And just yeah, I don't know, I don't feel like I have the capacity to fully talk about it. But yeah, I think it was a great book. And I mean, if you don't know much about the Holocaust, if you're maybe from not from Europe, I think in Europe everybody learns about it a lot, like everywhere. But maybe if you're not from Europe and you only know what you learned in school, like some basics, I think this book could be pretty interesting. Um, yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add. But yeah, so I would recommend this definitely. Okay, okay, so that's it. I feel like maybe I should have started with Mouse and then continue with the other books, because now I feel like we're kind of, or I'm kind of ending this video on a heavier note, but that's okay, I guess. I'm not sure if this wasn't too chaotic, but to be fair, I say this every video. I always feel like I'm chaotic because I am. So I hope that's fine with you guys. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you're reading and what you read in September, or what you're planning to read, you know. Like I said, I say this in every video, I just enjoy talking about books. So if you have anything book related that you want to share, feel free to do that. And I hope I'll see you next time. Bye!